What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down what's moving it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi is up 1.24%. Market closes in roughly 20 minutes from now. 10.07 the low, 10.73 the high. You're having a nice last minute push higher, and I think that has to do with optimism for over this weekend that China and the States will come to some sort of agreement. I believe it is set for tomorrow, having a discussion between the two countries. So again, I think there's that certain level of optimism. Aside from that, you're seeing rather low volume though, so 35.9 million shares being traded, 55.8 is the average. So a couple of different things did happen today, one of which is PPI came in very good, so lower than the forecast. So month over month came in negative 0.4, forecast was 0.1, so very good stuff for that. Michigan consumer sentiment, this is now the 5th consecutive negative report, so came in at 50.8, and then the forecast was 54.4, insinuating inflation obviously coming, and you can kind of see just the expectations, 6.7 versus 5. So it wasn't the best. That's what kind of spooked a lot of the broader market, caused SoFi to go from roughly 10.57 to the low for the day of 10.07. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from that, no actual news from SoFi, no SEC filings. There was one thing that was posted by Tanner a couple days back. I was meaning to bring it up, but web traffic. Usually you have to take this with a grain of salt, but there is some correlation between this and member growth. And in Q1, there was a lot of records broken. So 19.53 million in January, February 17.94 million, and then you had March 21.19 million. So absolutely kick-ass quarter. So again, history doesn't always repeat itself, and this isn't a direct correlation, but in the past there's some relevance to this. So I think all in all, this is very good stuff. One thing I do want to bring up associated to shorts. So right now shorts are increasing 1.5 million shares, showing that today's kind of green day isn't really justified, but 12.88% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 138.72 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow minimum still negative, so meaning there's some activity, some manipulative activity happening behind the scenes. But there was this article that came out earlier today, roughly around 11, saying Bank of America is short the S&P 500 until trade wars calm down, Feds cut rates. And so as you can see, it looks as though they are recommending to go long the 2-year treasury and short the S&P 500 until roughly around the 4,800 level. So kind of crazy when it comes down to that. And I immediately thought of this right here that came out late last month, and they did give a sell $13 price target. Analyst has a 53% success rating. That did come out of complete left field because previously they were rather bullish. So you had that, and also KBWs coming back to back. So kind of interesting in that regard. So do you agree? Do you think that there's more downside coming, or what's your kind of viewpoint? Just to give you an overview of that, so they're assuming S&P will get to roughly around that 4,800, and we're sitting at the 5,300 mark right now. So they're considering quite the significant pullback. So what's your kind of general thoughts on that in the comments below? As far as myself, I did buy a little bit today. I kind of went against what Bank of America is saying, and I'm actually deciding to buy the fear. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I didn't buy all that much. Like I shared with you, I did make a brand new portfolio, and so I did buy roughly right here, and so 35 shares at $10.68. It shows pending, but I'll just hit refresh and it did go through. I already got the email, but currently sitting at 70 shares in this portfolio. So I get nothing really crazy, but I'm up 5.72%, so I actually did average up. And then aside from that, I did buy TLT today and a couple other transactions over the last couple trading days. But yeah, I'll give you guys updates once I do get to 100 shares. That's where I'll start to do some covered calls in this portfolio. and so forth. But I do have a lot of excess cash, so roughly around 72 and change. So kind of, yeah, it should be fun. But aside from that, looking at the options, 6.34 million in calls, 3.58 in puts, 49% of all the options being done today are optimistic in nature. So fairly good stuff. So I do feel that, and I kind of agree with the broader market, there is going to be some resolution over this weekend, meaning Monday should be a very kick-ass start of the week. So yeah, it should be a thing. Things should be fairly fun for that. A couple of big transactions right here. So between 220 and 225, there's 176,000, and between here 580, between 1135 and 1140. So if we kind of pull this up just to give you an overview of what that is being done, based on the premiums, it looks like a very large multi-leg transaction, but very much oriented towards bullish. And it looks as though May 16th, $11 strike price, $11 call was purchased, and then January 16th, 2026, a $15 call was purchased. So they're not really assuming much downside as far as that. So let me know your viewpoint on that. Based on the call options that are being purchased, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that 1150 to 12 going into next week. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub 9. With today being Friday, market closing in roughly 15 minutes. Just take note of some of these kind of open interest levels. So with it at 1066 and change, 9,000 at the 1050, 7,000 at that 10, and then 16,000 at the 11. So most likely, given where it's at right now, 11 and above will be kind of worthless, unfortunately, but that's kind of the name of the game with options. These are all the transactions occurring on the secondary market above $100,000. So good amount of buying recently, ever since roughly around that 930 mark. So post the Michigan consumer sentiment, so it looks like big money was buying the fear, causing SoFi and whatever else to bounce off of those lows. So good to see. And then on the dark pool, transactions were rather timid as far as that. So no big transactions. It looks as though above 1 million. So big money is kind of just taking the day off for the most part. But with it at 1067, it is trading between this S1 and this S2. So 996 is going to be a strong support. 1091 is going to be that next strong resistance point. Like I said, I don't really see that being touched for the next little 15 minutes unless FOMO crazily just comes rushing in. But I think SoFi did do fairly okay for the last week. So with it closing at where it's roughly 1068 or in change, it's up 19.54% over the last 5 days. So definitely pays to buy the dip. One key level to really watch for, at least in the next couple trading days, is going to be that 200-day moving average. So that's sitting at 1139. But if it does stay within this range or it gets back to the $9 range, I'll be a buyer again. So kind of averaging down and so forth, because I think my average is roughly around 960-ish. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Did you buy? Did you sell? Do you think that there is going to be some resolution between the States and China over this weekend? Do you even care? Do you not care? What's your kind of general thoughts? And do you agree with Bank of America about potentially just the S&P 500 and the broader markets really pushing back to about that 4,800 level? Kind of crazy, but yeah, maybe that's why they've been giving some rarely negative ratings, not just with SoFi, but obviously I cover a lot of different stocks, and Bank of America has been rather bearish lately, so maybe that's kind of why. So hopefully everyone has a kick-ass weekend. Stay tuned for my video over the weekend where I go over some expectations and everything else, so definitely stay tuned for that. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching. Pop over to my Discord as well, completely free. A lot of good people talking about stocks, options, crypto, everything that you ever need. So link to that is in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.